Hi, I'm Gary Knoll. I'd like to welcome you to an ongoing series of video bios. For example, my work as an investigative journalist. When I came to New York City, I was fortunate enough to be blessed with having some friends, including some of the people who had been a part of the 1920s and 30s and 40s social activist causes. And they were all writers, but all writing on topics that showed the corruption of our different parts of society. And this influenced me, so I became involved also as a social activist. I did not have the experience. I was extremely naive. I didn't understand all the ways that society worked. I was more of an idealist. Coming from a small community in West Virginia, I thought that people worked together for common goal and good. I was wrong. So I tried to find a place to have my work published, and there was a single publication, caveat emptor, only place that I could find where people who had important investigations could have a regular column. Ralph Nader wrote for it. In fact, Ralph and I both were in the same publication going back to the very early 70s. I would write articles on the dangers of sugar and the dangers of cosmetic ingredients. What was in lipstick? What was in shampoo? What was in hair dyes? We wrote for free, we weren't paid, but at least we'd established that there was a place to go to if you had legitimate complaints about what was going on either in corporations or in government. And then one day I received a package at my door. It was anonymous, but inside the package was a group of documents from inside the AMA headquarters, revealing that there was a secret 25-year-long program looking to target and destroy all complementary and alternative therapies. And the one they feared the most was the one that was probably the most popular, chiropractic. I had a friend, so an activist attorney, and he said that this represented restraint of trade and it violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. So I did a series of articles on chiropractic. In other words, the desire and ability and the tools to destroy the entire profession. They also were against herbs and vitamins. In fact, they were against almost everything that we knew and had proof actually worked. One day I received a call from a man named Pat McGrady Jr. He was the Newsday editor, bureau chief in Moscow, and he said, "Would you like to do an investigation on a sacred cow?" And I said, "What's that?" American Cancer Society and the entire cancer industry. And he introduced me to his father, Pat McGrady Sr., who was the top public relations expert for 25 years to the American Cancer Society. And he laid out everything about his politics and the profiteering. So I wrote up an article, and a friend of mine, Robert Houston, was my co-author. And we spent months doing our fact-checking until we were convinced that everything was legitimate. In other words, we had the story. Nobody would publish it. They were afraid of the cancer establishment. They were afraid of their advertising or their financial support, because we took on the entire cancer establishment, showing how self-serving it was. President's Cancer Advisory Board were actually giving the majority of the money raised to their own institutions, their own research laboratories. Finally, a little East Side paper published it, and it ended up winning a prestigious award, investigative reporting. Then I got a call. This was a person who said, "I have a friend who's one of the most important publishers in America for investigative reporting." In fact, he's the only one who has the courage to take on the mob or anyone else. The question was, should we publish this expose? And every single one said no. The publisher, very soft-spoken man, leans across to me and says, "Do you really believe that by publishing these articles we can save lives?" And I said, "Sir, we have at least 7 important medical doctors or PhDs doing natural and alternative cancer treatments. Yes, we can save lives." He said, "Then we'll publish it." That began a 26-year relationship. He published Longevity, one of the most respected magazines in America, Omni, other publications, including Penthouse. And I said, think of all the people who would be offended by the sexual nature of your magazine, he said, not to worry. I'll send everybody who wants a copy of your story, just the story, as a free read. I'll even pay for their postage. I did dozens and dozens and dozens of stories. I believe I had 56 cover issues, and people were reading it because no one had ever exposed this. It was a series called Medical Genocide. Now, no one had ever used terms like that because you're taking on the entire medical industrial complex. And we never had a single lawsuit in over a quarter of a century. Then I received a call from one of the top producers at 60 Minutes, and they wanted to see my material on Lawrence Burton. So I took them down a gigantic case. They liked the material. It took me over 2 years to collect it all, and they did a special on it. Then 2020 called me to see what I had on Stanislaw Brzezinski. I'd gone to bat for Brzezinski and got the state county medical society off his back because he was using a natural and non-toxic method with good success to treat cancer. Again, they did a special on that, Geraldo Rivera. In fact, they won 2 Emmys on that. I was being contacted regularly by journalists who knew I had a deep well of research because they were just getting into it, and won a lot of awards and broke a lot of stories. But then I would take what I'd published and then broadcast it on WBAI or ABC for over 12 years on WABC and ABC Network Radio. So I had 2 audiences that I could reach. The general audience on ABC, very large audience, but also huge audience on WBAI, where I've been for 44 years, 5 days a week, and other Pacifica stations, where I was for 36 years, and for 33 years on PFW in Washington. So I was reaching that Washington insider, so a lot of information came to me from people who worked in bureaucracy, saw corruption. They would approach me and say, I think you'll find this of interest. And then I would research, and if it was valid, I would do a story on it. All told, I broke over 300 original investigative reporting stories. Broke the original stories on Agent Orange. In fact, there was a man named Paul Rudishan who represented the vets, almost 3 million vets who had been poisoned by Agent Orange but never acknowledged that it was poisoning them. The White House, the Defense Department, the Pentagon covered it up. We did over 100 broadcasts on Agent Orange. We had scientists on talking about how dangerous it was, and the government knew that it was toxic. And as a result of that, the government settled a small amount. I think it was $2 billion. It certainly did not cover their medical expenses. And the people who died because of Agent Orange poisoning, nor did it help the millions in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, who were also exposed to Agent Orange. I then was writing for other major magazines. And then in the year 2000, I decided, after having published hundreds of articles and doing over 1,000 interviews, because back then you didn't have what is called a satellite tour. I then said, I'm just going to publish up on the internet. And that's what I've done ever since. I don't do media. I don't do interviews. And yet I had good press. People Magazine, New York Times, Time Magazine. I mean, all these publications, they were good stories. I just said, I don't want it anymore. And I haven't done one in the last 20 years. But I published hundreds and hundreds of articles. Just in the last year, I've published over 60 articles, for example, on 5G, that's current, and on the coronavirus, what we're doing right or wrong, GMOs, and Monsanto, and glyphosate, on vaccines, and do they have the proof that they're safe and effective? Anything involving the environment, anything involving human health. Especially that which is mandated, so we don't really have a choice. If our kids don't take their vaccines, including the deadly Gardasil, they don't go into school. And we've exposed all the people behind it. In California, the people are about 50-50, supporting mandatory vaccines or not supporting them, wanting freedom of choice. We looked into the background of the people who sponsored this, and every single one of the legislators that supported mandatory vaccine had received money from the mandatory vaccine pharmaceutical company. There was a time when we had a lot of independent media, So if one person didn't like your story, another would. Not today. Today the media is fully on the side of the neoliberalist. So we expose corruption, malfeasance, wherever I find it. Millions upon millions of people who are reading these articles and sharing them. They're disseminated on global research, Natural Blaze, Truth Dig. Across the spectrum, we have dozens upon dozens of publications that disseminate this information because we have everything legally vetted by in-house counsel, and then we have a scholarly review. So today, I can't tell you the exact number of articles I've published, investigative reporting pieces, but I'm guessing they're around 600 articles because access to information is easier today using the internet. I wrote the first devastating article that I could find, maybe someone else did, but I wasn't aware of. William Duffy was doing good work on sugar blues. But as an article and as a continuing series of investigative reports on the radio, I did probably 70 exposés on sugar. I'd written a book earlier called Body Pollution, where I had a whole chapter in there on fluoridation. Today, people acknowledge fluoride is a toxin, should be in our water. We led that charge. On the irradiation of our food, did that. On the lack of good science in mammographies instead of thermographies. So, a whole lot done on this. And we were right there, the dangers and the fraud of gas hydrofracking, what it did to the environment and people's health. And of course on the American diet. We've never stopped talking about it because it's so much under control of special interest. The egg people, the pork people, the fish people, the beef people, the veal people, the dairy people. They've controlled the USDA's policies for decades. The whole food pyramid is a fraud. And they didn't have to show the world that they were receiving money for research or funding of their department at a university, all based upon an industry wanting to control the message. Sugar is good, it's not harmful. Yeah, it is. And for years, the sugar industry hired doctors, hired scientists to promote that it was fat, not sugar, that was causing disease. Yet they knew that it was sugar and they hid it. And if you look at peer-reviewed literature, health benefits of meat, health benefits of alcohol. Remember that lie for decades and decades? Alcohol extends your lifespan. Just the opposite. It was bad science. Now look under healthy vegan diet or plant-based diet. You have all the studies on that side of how it prevents colorectal cancer, depending upon the amount of fiber in the diet. So science finally has caught up. Good quality peer review, independent science is on our side. Corporate science, proprietary science, for-profit science is on their side. But they control and have captured the media. They control and have captured the legislators. They have controlled and captured much of the scientific community. So now we have to parse through this and see which is legitimate and which is just paid for. So that brings you up to date. I'm now 53 years on the air, sharing my message every day. So we've shared a lot of information, a lot of investigative reporting, and we will continue to be there as a voice for the voiceless. Thank you for watching.